Chapter 1. Shadows of Home. Staff Sergeant James Jimmy Callahan peered through his rifle scope at the distant ridgeline, his breathing steady despite the oppressive Afghan heat. Sweat trickled down his neck as he maintained his position, waiting for any sign of movement among the rocks. Target spotted, 2 clicks northeast. His spotter, Rodriguez, whispered. Armed tangos moving supplies. Jimmy adjusted his aim slightly, years of training guiding his movements. The familiar weight of his M40A5 sniper rifle pressed against his shoulder, a constant companion through countless missions. As he prepared to engage, his satellite phone buzzed in his pocket, an unexpected interruption that made him pause. Hold position, Jimmy muttered to Rodriguez, reaching for the device. A voice message from his son Evan waited in his inbox, unusual for this time of day back home in Kentucky. He pressed play, keeping one eye on his sector. Dad, Evan's voice cracked with panic, sending ice through Jimmy's veins. The cartel members' moms dating have taken over. They're using our home as a substance lab and said they'll use me as a shield when you return. I told them you're a Marine sniper, and they smirked. Now they're making me count their money. Jimmy's trigger finger tightened involuntarily as the message continued, each word stoking a fire in his chest. His son's voice, usually bright and energetic, now trembled with fear. The phone nearly cracked in his grip. Sergeant. Rodriguez noticed the change in his demeanor. Everything okay? No. Jimmy's voice was granite. Nothing's okay. Memories flashed through his mind. Claire's recent distant behavior during their video calls, her vague explanations about new friends at work, the way she dodged questions about their finances. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Pack it up, Jimmy ordered, already rising from their position. We're reporting back to base. The walk back was a blur of dust and determination. Jimmy's mind raced through scenarios, each worse than the last. His wife had not only betrayed him, but had put their son in danger. The thought of Evan surrounded by cartel members made his combat-trained muscles coil with tension. At the forward operating base, Jimmy strode directly to Captain Ronnie Hayes' office, ignoring the curious glances from fellow Marines. He found the captain reviewing mission reports, his weathered face illuminated by a desk lamp. Staff Sergeant Callahan. Hayes looked up, noting Jimmy's expression. What brings you here mid-patrol? Sir, requesting emergency leave. Jimmy stood at attention, his voice steady despite the storm inside. Family crisis back home. Hayes leaned back, studying him. Details, Callahan. Jimmy played Evan's message. Hayes' expression darkened as he listened, his fingers drumming once on the desk before falling still. You understand what you're walking into? Hayes asked, his tone careful. This isn't a standard domestic situation. Yes, sir. My son's in danger. Hayes nodded slowly. I've known you long enough to know you'll handle this, professionally. He reached for his computer. But remember, Callahan, vendettas can blind a man. Don't let rage cloud your judgment. Understood, sir. Jimmy's response was automatic, but they both knew the promise might be hard to keep. There's something else you should know, Hayes added, his voice dropping. We've been tracking cartel movements near your hometown. Might be connected. I'll send what intel I can to your secure email. Jimmy absorbed this information, adding it to his mental arsenal. Thank you, sir. As Jimmy left the office, Hayes called after him. And Callahan, whatever happens, I never saw that message. Back in his quarters, Jimmy began packing with military precision. Each item had a purpose: civilian clothes, basic tools, emergency cash. His hands moved automatically while his mind replayed memories of happier times. He remembered teaching Evan to fish last summer, their laughter echoing across the lake. Claire had been there too, but now Jimmy recalled how she'd kept checking her phone, how her smile had seemed forced. Had it already started then? Had she already been plotting with them? A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Rodriguez stood there, concern evident on his features. Heard you're leaving, his spotter said. Bad business back home. The worst. Jimmy continued packing. Need backup. Jimmy paused, considering. Rodriguez was a good man, loyal to a fault. But this was personal. No, this is something I need to handle alone. Rodriguez nodded, understanding. Watch your six, Sergeant. Some enemies don't wear uniforms. Meanwhile, back in Kentucky, Claire Callahan sat at her kitchen table, watching Victor Mendez count stacks of cash. The cartel leader moved with calculated grace, his expensive suit at odds with their modest surroundings. Family photos still hung on the walls. Jimmy in his dress blues, Evan at his school science fair, silent witnesses to how far she'd fallen. "Your husband's coming home," Victor stated without looking up. It wasn't a question. Claire's fingers tightened around her coffee mug. "How do you know?" "Because that's what men like him do." Victor's smile didn't touch his eyes. "They come running when their family calls." "Predictable. Useful." "You promised no one would get hurt," Claire said, her voice smaller than she intended. Victor finally looked at her, his expression almost gentle. "And no one will, mi amor. As long as everyone plays their part." He gestured to the stairs. "How's our young accountant doing?" Upstairs, Evan sat cross-legged on his bed, surrounded by neat stacks of bills. His hands moved quickly, counting each stack twice as instructed. On his desk lay his father's last letter from Afghanistan, read so many times the paper had started to tear at the folds. One of Victor's men, Marco, watched from the doorway, absently cleaning his nails with a knife. "Faster, kid. Don't make me tell the boss you're slacking." Evan's hands trembled slightly, but he didn't slow down. He'd learned quickly that showing fear only made things worse. Instead, he focused on the numbers, on the mechanical process of counting, and waited. His father would come. That was the one thing Evan knew with absolute certainty. The chapter unfolds further with other key characters preparing for the brewing storm. In the local police station, Detective Marcus Cole reviewed a thick file on Victor Mendez, his coffee growing cold beside him. Years of surveillance photos and incident reports painted a clear picture of the cartel's growing influence in their quiet town. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Jimmy's coming home. We need to talk." Marcus deleted the message immediately, but a small smile crossed his face. Maybe now they'd finally have a chance to bring Mendez down. Jimmy Callahan, decorated Marine sniper, was coming home to war. But this time, the battlefield would be his own backyard, and the stakes would be measured not in territory gained or lost, but in the lives of those he loved most. Chapter 2. Coming Home to Chaos. The commercial flight touched down at Louisville International Airport under a blazing Kentucky sun. Jimmy Callahan, now in civilian clothes, moved through the terminal with military alertness, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Every face was a potential threat, every casual glance scrutinized for hidden intent. He'd spent the flight studying satellite images of his neighborhood, courtesy of Captain Hayes's intel package. His house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, backing up to dense woodland. Tactical advantages he'd once appreciated for their privacy, now evaluated as potential infiltration routes. Jimmy's first stop wasn't home. Instead, he drove a rental car to a storage facility on the outskirts of town. The unit had been rented under an alias, a precaution from his early days in special operations. Inside, he found everything untouched: surveillance equipment, secure communications gear, and a gun safe containing weapons that wouldn't trace back to him. His phone vibrated. Detective Marcus Cole's number. "You're back," Marcus said when Jimmy answered. "Word travels fast. In our line of work, it better." Marcus paused. "We need to meet. Not at the usual place. The fishing spot." 1 hour. Jimmy arrived early at the abandoned boat dock, choosing a position with clear sight lines in all directions. Marcus's unmarked police car pulled up exactly on time, gravel crunching under its tires. The detective stepped out, his suit jacket concealing his service weapon. Age and desk work had added weight to his frame since their last meeting, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "You look like hell," Marcus observed. "Afghanistan does that." Jimmy didn't move from his position. "What do you know about Victor Mendez?" Marcus pulled out a thick manila envelope. "Official version? Local businessman. Owns several legitimate enterprises, including the Redstone Bar, where Claire works." "Unofficial version? He's running one of the most sophisticated cartel operations I've seen in 20 years of law enforcement." Jimmy took the envelope, scanning its contents. "And you haven't moved on him because?" "Political protection." Marcus's disgust was evident. "He's got friends in high places, Jimmy. State level. Maybe higher. Every time we get close, the investigation gets shut down." "Tell me about his organization." "Core group of about 20 men, all experienced. They're using your house as one of several processing locations." "Claire." Marcus hesitated. "She's been with him for at least 6 months. Started as a bartender, moved up to something more, Intimate. Jimmy's expression didn't change, but his grip on the envelope tightened. And Evan? They're keeping him close. Insurance against both you and Claire. Victor's smart. He knows having your son gives him leverage over both of you. You've been watching my family? Marcus met his gaze. Someone had to. I owed you after that business with the corrupt cops last year. But Jimmy, you need to understand, this isn't just about your family anymore. We've linked Victor's operation to 3 overdose deaths in the last month alone. He's flooding our streets with poison. Jimmy absorbed this information, adding it to his mental map of the situation. I need something else from you, Marcus. Building plans, utility layouts, anything official about my house and the surrounding properties. Already in the envelope. But Jimmy, Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Victor's men aren't street thugs. They're trained, organized, and they won't hesitate to kill. Neither will I. As Marcus drove away, Jimmy began studying the documents. His military training kicked in, analyzing approaches and vulnerabilities. The house's layout, once so familiar, now represented a tactical challenge to be solved. He spent the next several hours conducting surveillance from the woods behind his property. Through high-powered binoculars, he watched guards patrol and practiced patterns. 2 men at the front, 2 at the back, rotating every 4 hours. They carried themselves like professionals, former military or law enforcement, Jimmy guessed. Movement at an upstairs window caught his attention. Evan appeared briefly, his face pale but determined. He pressed his hand against the glass in a deliberate pattern, Morse code, just as Jimmy had taught him during their camping trips. Safe. Waiting. Trust you. Jimmy's chest tightened. His son hadn't forgotten their training, hadn't lost faith. Now it was time to prove that faith justified. As darkness fell, Jimmy's phone buzzed again. An unknown number, but he knew who it would be. Hello, Jimmy. Victor Mendez's voice was smooth, cultured, carrying just a hint of his native Colombia. Welcome home. If you've hurt my son, please, we're all civilized men here. Evan is perfectly safe. Quite the mathematician, actually. Very helpful with our accounting. Jimmy's free hand curled into a fist. Let me speak to him. Soon. First, we should discuss terms. I have a business proposition for you. Your skills could be very valuable to my organization. Not interested? No? Perhaps Claire can convince you. She's quite persuasive, as you know. There was a rustling sound. Then Claire's voice came on the line. Jimmy? Baby, please, it's not what you think. Victor's been good to us, Jimmy ended the call. His face was expressionless as he watched another guard patrol pass his position. Back at the house, Victor set the phone down with a small smile. He hung up. Predictable. Claire wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warm evening. He'll kill you. Many have tried. Mia more. Victor touched her cheek gently. Your husband is a soldier. He thinks in straight lines, direct action. I think in circles within circles. By the time he realizes the true game, it will be too late. Upstairs, Evan lay in bed, pretending to sleep while Marco stood guard outside his door. His father was out there, watching, planning. Evan remembered every hunting trip, every lesson about patience and observation. The deadliest predators, his father had taught him, are the ones you never see coming. Through his window, Evan could just make out the edge of the woods where he used to play. Somewhere in that darkness, James Callahan was preparing for war. And when it came, Evan knew no amount of Victor's money or men would be enough to stop it. Chapter 3. The First Strike. Rico Alvarez adjusted his leather jacket as he entered the Pink Flamingo, the strip club's neon sign casting a garish glow across his face. The bouncer nodded respectfully. Everyone knew Rico worked for Victor Mendez, and no one wanted trouble with the cartel. He settled into his usual booth, ordering his usual drink, completely unaware of the man watching from the bar. Jimmy Callahan nursed a beer, his expression neutral as he studied his target. Rico was the weak link in Victor's organization, young, flashy, eager to prove himself. Perfect. You look like you've seen some action, Rico commented later at the bar, taking the bait Jimmy had carefully laid through casual conversation and staged phone calls. Military. Former Force Recon, Jimmy replied, using one of his prepared covers. Now I do freelance work. Specialty acquisitions, security, whatever pays. Rico's eyes lit up with interest. Maybe we should talk business. My organization's always looking for talent. They moved to a quieter booth, Rico already loosened up by alcohol and the prospect of recruiting a valuable asset. Jimmy played his role perfectly, competent but not threatening, interested but not eager. Got to be careful these days, Rico explained, trying to sound worldly. Some Marine snipers causing trouble, targeting our operations. Boss is pretty worked up about it. Jimmy took a careful sip of his beer. This sniper, he good? Must be. Took out 2 of our surveillance posts clean. No traces. Rico leaned forward. Between us? Boss is worried. This guy's got military training, knows our routines. Been watching us. Sounds personal. Yeah, something about his kid. Rico caught himself. Anyway, not my business. Point is, we could use someone with your background. An hour later, Rico staggered into the alley behind the club, Jimmy supporting him with apparent concern. You okay, man? Let me call you a cab. Nah, just need some air. Rico never saw the strike coming. Jimmy's movements were precise, economical. No wasted motion as he pinned Rico against the wall, nerve strikes paralyzing the younger man's arms. Now, Jimmy's voice was ice. Tell me everything about Victor's operation. Start with the security rotations at my house. Rico's eyes widened with belated recognition. You're him. The sniper. Talk fast. The information spilled out between gasps of pain. Guard schedules, delivery routes, safe houses. Jimmy memorized every detail, comparing it against what he'd already observed. When Rico ran out of useful intelligence, Jimmy administered a precise blow that would leave him unconscious but alive. The message had to be clear. Cooperation meant survival. At the house, Claire paced in the master bedroom, her nerves frayed by the growing tension. Victor watched her from an armchair, his dark eyes following her movements. You're worried about Rico, he observed. Don't be. He's expendable. Claire stopped pacing. Jimmy won't stop. You don't know him like I do. On the contrary, Mia more. Victor rose smoothly. I understand men like your husband perfectly. They live by codes, rules. That makes them predictable. A knock interrupted them. Diego Torres, Victor's lieutenant, entered with a tablet. Boss, Rico missed his check-in. Victor's expression hardened. Find him. In the basement lab, chemists worked methodically while armed guards maintained their posts. The operation had expanded beyond its initial scope. What started as a simple distribution point had grown into a major processing facility. The irony of using a Marine's home as their base wasn't lost on anyone. Upstairs, Evan lay awake, listening to the footsteps below. He'd memorized their patterns, noted shift changes, identified which guards were cruel and which merely followed orders. His father had taught him the importance of gathering intelligence, though Evan doubted Jimmy had expected those lessons to be applied like this. A soft tap at his window made Evan's heart race. Using the guard's blind spots that he'd carefully mapped, he crept to the glass. A small red light blinked from the treeline, Morse code again. Soon. Be ready. Evan flashed back an acknowledgement using his reading light, careful to keep the beam narrow. Marco, his usual guard, was downstairs getting coffee. 3 minutes until he returned, like clockwork. In the woods, Jimmy recorded another small victory. Evan's signal had confirmed the guard rotations Rico had revealed. His son's resourcefulness made him proud, even as it filled him with rage that Evan needed such skills. Jimmy's phone vibrated. Marcus. Rico Alvarez was just found behind the pink flamingo, the detective reported. Alive, but rattled. He's demanding protective custody. Did he say why? Claims he met death in a leather jacket. Very poetic. Marcus paused. Jimmy, Victor's bringing in reinforcements. Whatever you're planning, do it soon. Already in motion. I need one more thing. Name it. A distraction. Tomorrow night, east side of the property. Something to draw their attention without raising too many alarms. Marcus understood. I'll have a patrol car respond to a noise complaint. Standard procedure, nothing suspicious. Perfect. Jimmy ended the call and continued his surveillance. The next piece fell into place just before dawn. Sophie Ramirez, former DEA agent turned private investigator, made contact through one of Marcus's secure channels. Her message was brief but significant. My brother died in one of Victor's labs. I have files you need to see. They met at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. Sophie was sharp-featured and intense, with the hyper-aware posture of someone used to looking over their shoulder. Victor's operation goes deeper than substances, she explained, sliding a thumb drive across the table. Human trafficking, money laundering, political bribes. I've been building a case for 2 years. Why help me? Because you'll do what law enforcement can't. Sophie's eyes held personal pain. Sometimes justice needs to operate outside the system. Jimmy reviewed the files in his motel room, each document adding another layer to Victor's empire. The cartel leader hadn't chosen Jimmy's home by chance. Its location provided perfect distribution routes. Its owner's military background offered excellent cover. And Claire? Claire had been the key that unlocked everything. As the sun rose on day 3 of Jimmy's return, the pieces were in position. Rico's interrogation had provided operational details. Marcus's police contacts offered strategic opportunities. Sophie's intelligence filled in the gaps. Now it was time to move. But Victor wasn't idle. In the study of Jimmy's house, he met with his inner circle, including Diego Torres, who'd grown increasingly concerned about their exposure. The sniper's playing with us, Diego argued. Rico was a message. We should relocate the operation. Victor dismissed the suggestion with a wave. This location is perfect. And we have his son. The son could become a liability, Diego pressed. Children talk. Make mistakes. Children also ensure cooperation. Victor turned to Claire, who stood nervously by the door. Isn't that right, mi amor? Claire nodded, but her eyes betrayed her doubts. She'd watched Victor's organization grow increasingly violent, far from the sophisticated operation he'd first described. The charming businessman who'd offered her excitement and escape had shown more of his true nature with each passing day. Speaking of cooperation, Victor continued. It's time we gave Jimmy another chance to join us. Call him. Claire's hands shook as she dialed. The call went straight to voicemail. Victor smiled. No matter. He'll contact us soon enough. The first act concludes with tension coiled like a spring. Each player had revealed their opening moves, but the true game was just beginning. Jimmy Callahan had come home to save his son, but he'd stumbled into something far larger, a web of corruption, betrayal, and violence that would demand more than military training to survive. Through his rifle scope, Jimmy watched the night shift change guards, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. Tomorrow, Marcus's distraction would provide his opening. Sophie's intelligence would help him navigate Victor's defenses. But first, he had one more person to contact. Taking out a burner phone, he dialed Claire's private number. When she answered, his voice was calm, controlled. You've got one chance, he said. One chance to help me save our son. After that, you're on your own. The line went silent as Claire faced her moment of truth. In the heavy pause that followed, the first act draws to a close, leaving each character poised on the edge of decisions that would soon turn their world into a battlefield. Chapter 4, Breaking Point. Claire stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, her hands gripping the porcelain sink. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of sleepless nights spent questioning her choices. The bathroom fan hummed, masking her whispered conversation on the burner phone Jimmy had arranged through Marcus. The photos you sent, she spoke softly. Where did you get them? Does it matter? Jimmy's voice was distant, professional. You've seen what Victor plans for you and Evan. Once the heat dies down, you're both loose ends. Claire's throat tightened. The surveillance photos showed Victor meeting with his lieutenants, discussing cleanup operations. Her name had appeared in the transcript, alongside Evan's. He told me we were family. Victor tells people what they need to hear. You're not special, Claire. You're disposable. The truth hit her like a physical blow. She'd traded her real family for an illusion, and now that illusion was crumbling. What do you want me to do? Watch. Listen. Report. But most importantly, keep Evan safe until I make my move. A knock at the bathroom door made Claire jump. 1 minute. Take your time, mi amor. Victor's voice carried through the door. We have that meeting with our distributors soon. Claire splashed water on her face, composing herself. When she opened the door, Victor stood waiting, impeccable in his tailored suit. His smile seemed different now, predatory rather than charming. You seem tense, he observed, touching her cheek. Perhaps you should rest today. Skip the meeting. No, I'm fine. Claire forced a smile. Just tired. Victor's hand lingered on her face. You'd tell me if something was bothering you, yes? If anyone had contacted you. Of course. Down the hall, Diego Torres watched the interaction with growing unease. He'd served Victor for 5 years, but something felt wrong about this operation. Using a Marine's home as their base was risky enough. Keeping his son as leverage was asking for retribution. Diego's phone buzzed. Another report about Jimmy Callahan's movements. The Marine had been spotted near their warehouse district, photographing delivery schedules. Victor had dismissed the surveillance as predictable behavior, but Diego wasn't so sure. He's testing our response times, Diego muttered to himself, looking for patterns. In the basement, Evan sat cross-legged on his makeshift bed, apparently absorbed in a comic book. In reality, he was listening to the guards' conversations, noting which ones complained about schedule changes, which ones were reliable. Marco, his regular guard, was discussing shift rotations with another man. Victor's moving the big shipment up, Marco said. Boss is spooked by the sniper. Thought he had it under control. Yeah, well, Rico's saying like a bird in protective custody. Told the cops everything about our warehouse setup. Evan kept his expression neutral, but his mind raced. His father was making them nervous, forcing them to change plans. Just like the hunting trips, when Jimmy would explain how to push prey into making mistakes. Above the house, storm clouds gathered as evening approached. Sophie Ramirez sat in her parked car 2 blocks away, monitoring radio frequencies. The cartel's communications suggested increasing paranoia, more frequent check-ins, doubled patrols, nervous chatter about the Marine ghost in their midst. Her phone lit up with a text from Jimmy. Warehouse intel confirmed. Yes, major shipment tomorrow night. They're rushing it because of Rico. Perfect. Sophie smiled grimly. She'd been tracking Victor's operation since they killed her brother, gathering evidence that never seemed quite enough for a conviction. Now, finally, she had a partner who could hurt them where it mattered. At the police station, Marcus Cole reviewed Jimmy's latest intelligence drop. The photos and documents painted a damning picture. Political bribes, smuggling routes, blackmail material. Everything needed to bring down Victor's empire, if they could only find a way to use it legally. Detective, an officer knocked on his door. That witness you asked about, Rico Alvarez? He's demanding new protection. Says his safe house isn't secure enough. Marcus leaned back, considering. Rico's paranoia could work in their favor. Tell him we'll move him tonight. But use the route I specify. The pieces were falling into place. Jimmy's pressure had Victor's organization making mistakes, breaking routine. Claire's information about internal meetings filled crucial gaps. Even Evan's careful observations of guard patterns helped complete the puzzle. As night fell, Victor paced in Jimmy's study. His study now, he reminded himself. The room still held traces of its former owner. Military awards on the walls. Family photos he kept as psychological warfare tools. He picked up a framed picture of Jimmy in his dress blues, Claire, and Evan smiling beside him. You should have stayed in Afghanistan, Victor told the image. Heroes don't belong in my world. Boss. Diego entered with a tablet. We found something. Security cameras caught Callahan meeting with a woman near the warehouse district. Former DEA agent named Sophie Ramirez. Victor's expression darkened. The one who's been investigating us. Interesting. He set down the photo. Perhaps it's time we change the game. Bring me Evan. Sir, if Callahan wants to play hero, let's give him a proper villain to fight. Claire, listening from the hallway, felt her blood run cold. She pulled out the burner phone, fingers trembling as she typed. Moving Evan. Something's wrong. Victor knows about Sophie. The response came instantly. Get our son ready. It starts tonight. Chapter 5. The siege begins. The warehouse squatted against the night sky, its metal walls reflecting dull orange from security lights. Jimmy watched through binoculars as trucks arrived, cartel members unloading crates with practiced efficiency. Each vehicle's plate number, each guard's position, all carefully noted and cross-referenced with Sophie's intelligence. Count 17 armed personnel, Sophie whispered beside him. She'd insisted on being part of the operation, her DEA training making her a valuable ally. For on the perimeter, rest inside. Jimmy lowered the binoculars. And the shipment. Chemical precursors, mostly. Raw materials for their lab operation. Victor's rushing production, getting sloppy. 3 blocks away, Marcus waited in his unmarked car, monitoring police frequencies. He'd arranged for patrols to avoid this area, citing a fictional surveillance operation. The radio crackled with routine chatter, providing cover for what was about to happen. Jimmy checked his equipment one final time. The charges were simple but effective. designed to create chaos rather than destruction. Remember, he told Sophie, this is a distraction. The real target is the house, where your son is being held by a paranoid cartel leader. Sophie's tone was skeptical. You sure about this timing? Victor's expecting me to hit the warehouse. It's the logical target. Jimmy started moving toward their entry point, which means his security will be split, stretched thin. Inside the warehouse, workers loaded pallets with industrial chemicals. Armed guards maintained their posts, professional but increasingly nervous. Rico's defection had everyone on edge, wondering who might be next. The first explosion took them completely by surprise. Fire bloomed from the loading dock, scattering workers and guards alike. Smoke filled the air as secondary charges detonated near the chemical storage areas. Nobody noticed Sophie slipping through a side door, downloading files from the office computers, while Jimmy's distraction kept everyone occupied. We've got company, a guard shouted, spotting movement on the roof. The sniper. Gunfire erupted, guards shooting at shadows while Jimmy's carefully placed speakers played recorded footsteps and equipment sounds. Each false sighting drew more men away from their posts, spreading confusion and fear. Victor's phone rang as the first reports came in. He stood in Jimmy's study, watching security feeds from multiple locations. Talk to me. The warehouse is under attack. Diego's voice competed with gunfire and alarms. Multiple explosions, possible shooter on the roof. How many casualties? None yet. Looks like they're using smoke and noise to dash. Diego paused. Wait. The computers. Someone's accessing our files. Victor's grip tightened on the phone. Protect those records. And find me Callahan. But Jimmy was already gone, the warehouse attack serving its purpose. As Victor's men chased ghosts, Jimmy moved toward his real objective, home. Claire heard the distant explosions and recognized her cue. She headed for Evan's room, heart pounding. Marco stood guard outside, alert but distracted by radio reports from the warehouse. Victor wants the boy moved, Claire said, keeping her voice steady. Safe house protocol. Marco hesitated. I didn't get that order. Communications are confused because of the attack. You want to call Victor and question his decisions. The guard's uncertainty was all she needed. Claire opened the door to find Evan already prepared, a small backpack ready. She'd taught him to pack light, just like Jimmy had during their camping trips. Come on, honey. We need to go. Evan moved quickly but calmly, showing none of the fear Claire felt herself. They made it halfway to the garage before an incoming call shattered their escape plan. Stop them. Victor's voice boomed through Marco's radio. The woman and boy don't leave. Marco raised his weapon, but Claire was ready. The taser, hidden in her jacket pocket, provided by Jimmy through Marcus, struck the guard in the chest. He convulsed and dropped, giving them precious seconds to run. The back door, Evan said firmly. Dad showed me how to disappear in the woods. Claire marveled at her son's composure even as she followed his lead. They reached the tree line just as shouts and flashlight beams announced their discovery. Find them. Victor's rage carried across the property. Bring me the boy. But the forest belonged to Evan and Jimmy. The boy moved confidently through paths he'd mentally mapped during his captivity, leading his mother away from searching guards. Behind them, more explosions lit up the night, Jimmy's final distractions, drawing attention away from their escape. Sophie's voice crackled through Claire's hidden earpiece. Keep moving southeast. Marcus has a car waiting 2 miles out. In the chaos of the warehouse attack, no one noticed Diego Torres slipping away from his post. He'd seen enough to recognize a losing game, and Victor's obsession with punishing Jimmy had become dangerous. It was time to consider other options. His phone contained enough evidence to buy immunity with the FBI, if he could reach them first. Diego headed for his backup vehicle, already planning his testimony. At the safe house where Rico was being held, Marcus watched the operation unfold through status updates on his phone. The former cartel member had proved useful, his paranoid ramblings about Jimmy providing perfect cover for tonight's activities. Detective, Rico called from the other room. I heard explosions. Nothing to worry about. Marcus smiled slightly. Just some routine police work. The warehouse operation had served multiple purposes, destroying Victor's supply chain, stealing crucial evidence, and most importantly, proving Jimmy could strike anywhere, anytime. The psychological impact would force Victor to make mistakes. Victor stood in his command center, watching his organization unravel. The warehouse computers had been compromised. Security footage showed Sophie Ramirez's involvement, and now Claire had betrayed him. But losing Evan, his most valuable leverage, that was unforgivable. I want search teams in those woods, he ordered. And get me Diego. Where is that coward? But Diego was already gone, carrying secrets that could destroy everything Victor had built. The cartel leader's carefully constructed web of control was collapsing, strand by strand. Jimmy observed the chaos through his rifle scope, watching guard patterns disintegrate as panic spread. Claire and Evan's escape had been the first phase. Now, with Victor's attention divided and his men scattered, it was time for the next move. Chapter 6. Into the Lion's Den. Victor Mendez had always prided himself on control over his organization, his territory, his people. Now he stood in the ransacked command center, watching that control dissolve into chaos. Claire and Evan's escape had triggered a cascade of defections and paranoia. Report, he snapped into his phone. No sign of them in the woods, a guard responded. But we found something else. Diego's car, abandoned near the highway. His phones are dead. Victor hurled his glass against the wall. Diego had been his most trusted lieutenant, the one person who knew all the operation's secrets. His defection was a wound that could prove fatal. Find him, Victor ordered, and bring me someone who can trace those computer breaches. But Sophie had done her work well. The warehouse computers were thoroughly compromised, their encrypted files copied and corrupted. Years of transaction records, shipping manifests, and blackmail material, all now in enemy hands. Jimmy watched the house through thermal imaging, noting how the guard patterns had deteriorated. Professional discipline had given way to nervous clustering, leaving gaps in coverage. Perfect. Marcus, he spoke into his secure radio. Status on the package? Claire and Evan are safe, the detective responded. Sophie's uploading the files now. But Jimmy. Victor's called in reinforcements. Heavy hitters from out of state. How long? 3 hours, maybe 4. Jimmy checked his watch. Enough time, barely. Maintain the perimeter. No police response unless I give the signal. Inside the house, Victor's remaining men fortified their positions, boarding windows and establishing kill zones. They'd learned to fear the unseen sniper, jumping at shadows and silhouettes. Sir, a guard approached Victor cautiously. We found traces of Claire's phone activity. She's been communicating with someone for days. Encoded messages through a burner phone. Victor struck the man, splitting his lip. And you're just reporting this now? We only found the pattern after checking everyone's communications. After Diego. Get out. Alone in the study, Victor poured himself another drink. The room still held traces of its rightful owner, Jimmy's presence lingering like an accusation. Financial records showed the true scope of their losses. The warehouse destruction, Diego's defection, and Sophie's cyber attack had crippled their operation. His phone buzzed, an unknown number. Having staff problems? Jimmy's voice was calm, almost conversational. Victor gripped the phone tightly. Come to gloat, Marine? No. Coming to end this. You're finished, Victor. Diego's talking to the FBI right now. Sophie has your files. Marcus has enough evidence to bring down your political protection. Yet here you are, calling instead of attacking. What? Professional courtesy. Surrender now. You might survive what's coming. Victor laughed, but there was an edge of hysteria in it. You think I became who I am by surrendering? This is my house now. My territory. No. Jimmy's voice hardened. It's my home. You're just a temporary infection. The line went dead, leaving Victor alone with his fears. He began issuing orders, positioning snipers, establishing fallback points, preparing for siege. But the certainty that had marked his rise to power was gone, replaced by creeping doubt. Outside, Jimmy moved through the darkness with practiced skill. Each step brought him closer to the house he'd once shared with his family. The home where he'd taught Evan to play catch, where Claire had kissed him goodbye before his deployment. Sacred ground, desecrated by Victor's presence. His radio crackled softly. Jimmy. Sophie's voice was urgent. The files we recovered. There's something else. Victor wasn't just using your house for illegal substances. He's been running weapons, coordinating with terrorist cells. This goes way beyond a cartel operation. Does Marcus know? Briefing him now. Jimmy, the reinforcements he's calling? They're not cartel. They're mercenaries. Professional killers. Jimmy absorbed this information, adjusting his plans. The stakes had grown beyond personal vengeance. Now he was preventing something far worse. In the safe house, Claire held Evan close while Marcus coordinated with FBI contacts. Her son hadn't spoken much since their escape, but his eyes were clear and focused. "Did Dad teach you those escape routes?" Claire asked softly. Evan nodded. "He said always know your exit points. Always have a backup plan." He looked at his mother. "Did you really not know what Victor was doing?" Claire's chest tightened at the accusation in his voice. "I knew some of it, but not everything. Not about the weapons, or—" She trailed off, unable to justify her choices. Marcus entered the room, his expression grim. "FBI's moving on the intel. But Victor's mercenaries are already in play. 3 teams, former special forces. They're setting up blocking positions around the neighborhood. Can't you stop them?" Claire demanded. "Not without exposing our operation. Right now, they think it's just a cartel dispute. If federal agents move in, it'll turn into a bloodbath." At the house, Jimmy had reached his first objective. The garden shed, seemingly abandoned, contained his cached weapons and equipment. He'd prepared this spot months ago, instinct warning him that trouble was coming. His radio clicked twice, Sophie's signal. "Mercenaries are setting up sniper positions on the East Ridge. They're professionals, Jimmy. Delta Force backgrounds." "Good." Jimmy checked his gear. "They'll understand what's about to happen." Inside, Victor paced the study as reports came in. His reinforcements were deploying, turning the neighborhood into a kill zone. But doubt gnawed at him. Jimmy had known about the weapons shipments, had targeted specific computer files. Someone close had betrayed him long before Diego's defection. A guard burst in. "Sir, we found surveillance equipment in the basement. Cameras, microphones, some of it's been here for months." Victor stared at the damaged devices. Claire hadn't just helped Jimmy recently. She'd been his eyes and ears from the beginning. Each revelation stripped away another layer of his control. His phone buzzed again. Not Jimmy this time, but his cartel superiors. They wanted answers about the warehouse destruction, about the compromised files. Victor's explanations sounded hollow even to himself. The first shot came without warning. A guard at the front gate dropped, a precise hit that sparked panic among the others. Jimmy wasn't announcing his presence anymore. He was hunting. "Contact front." Someone shouted. "He's Dash." The second shot cut off the warning. Victor grabbed his rifle, years of combat experience taking over. Establish crossfire positions. Don't bunch up. But Jimmy had studied their tactics, knew their training. Each shot forced them to react predictably, moving into pre-sighted kill zones. The professional mercenaries recognized the pattern too late. "He's not attacking," one of them radioed. "He's hurting us." Sophie monitored the police bands as gunfire echoed through the neighborhood. Marcus had arranged a media blackout, attributing the sounds to a training exercise. No civilian casualties, no collateral damage. Jimmy was keeping his promises. In the command center, Victor watched his security camera feeds. Bodies lay where they fell, taken down with sniper precision. The mercenaries were pinned down, unable to advance or retreat without exposing themselves. "Where is he?" Victor demanded, but the thermal imaging showed nothing. Jimmy had learned to defeat such technology in Afghanistan, using terrain and timing to mask his movements. A new sound cut through the chaos. Helicopters approaching. The FBI had moved faster than expected, Diego's information proving decisive. Victor's political protection was crumbling, his organization exposed. "Sir," a mercenary commander radioed. "We need to extract. This position is compromised." Victor ignored the warning. Rage and desperation had replaced tactical thinking. This house represented everything he'd built, every step of his rise to power. Losing it meant losing himself. Movement caught his eye, a shadow in the hallway. He fired instinctively, bullets tearing through drywall. But Jimmy was already gone, playing the same ghost games that had terrorized his men. "Come face me," Victor shouted into the empty house. "No more sniper games." "Okay." The voice came from behind him. Victor spun, raising his weapon, but Jimmy was faster. The fight was brutal, close-quarters combat that destroyed the study. 2 skilled killers, one defending his territory, the other reclaiming his home. Victor landed a solid hit, sending Jimmy staggering. "I own this place now. Everything here belongs to me." "No." Jimmy's voice was cold. "You're just a squatter. And your time's up." The final exchange was swift, decisive. Victor's fury made him predictable, while Jimmy's controlled rage guided each strike. When it ended, Victor lay broken, his empire destroyed not by federal agents or rival cartels, but by a father protecting his family. Jimmy zip-tied Victor's hands as helicopter spotlights illuminated the house. Outside, FBI teams were moving in, securing the scene. Marcus would handle the official story, a joint task force operation, everything by the book. Sophie's voice came through his radio. "It's done, Jimmy. The files are with the authorities. Diego's testimony is locked in. They're all going down." Jimmy keyed his mic once in acknowledgement. The mission was complete, but the aftermath, dealing with Claire's betrayal, helping Evan heal, that would require a different kind of strength. Through the study window, he watched federal agents lead away Victor's surviving men. The house would need repairs, walls patched, memories rebuilt. But it was his again, cleansed of its temporary infection. Chapter 7. Rebuilding Trust. Jimmy sat across from Dr. Sarah Chun, watching Evan through the one-way glass of the therapy room. His son worked on a drawing, his movements precise and controlled, too controlled for an 11-year-old. "He's processing the trauma differently than most children his age," Dr. Chun noted, reviewing her files. "More analytical, less emotional outburst. He's using what I taught him," Jimmy said. "Observation, analysis, control, the skills that helped him survive." Dr. Chun set down her notepad. "But now he needs to learn it's okay to feel vulnerable again. Both of you do." Jimmy absorbed this, remembering his own struggles after combat deployments. "How do I help him?" "Share your experiences. Not just the victories, the fears, the doubts. Show him that strength includes asking for help." In the therapy room, Evan completed his drawing, a detailed map of the house during his captivity, marked with guard positions and escape routes. Dr. Chun had encouraged this documentation, helping him transform surveillance into art therapy. Later that afternoon, father and son walked through their neighborhood. The FBI had cleared out, the media attention had faded, but neighbors still watched them with mixed curiosity and concern. "Your mom called again," Jimmy said carefully. "She'd like to talk." Evan kicked a stone along the sidewalk. "What about?" "Whatever you want. On your terms." Jimmy stopped walking. "But you don't have to if you're not ready." "Did you forgive her?" Jimmy considered the question. "I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't easy, but holding on to anger." He gestured at their surroundings. "That's what turned Victor into what he was. He wasn't always bad. No one starts that way, buddy. People make choices, justify them, lose their way bit by bit." They reached the local park where Jimmy had once taught Evan to play catch. The boys studied the familiar space with new eyes, automatically noting cover positions and sight lines. "Can we?" Evan hesitated. "Can we just play catch?" Like before, Jimmy pulled 2 mitts and a baseball from his backpack. Some things needed no words, just the simple rhythm of father and son, rebuilding trust one throw at a time. At the police station, Marcus reviewed case files with his new anti-corruption task force. Victor's operation had exposed deep roots of law enforcement complicity, leading to multiple arrests and resignations. "Detective Cole?" An officer knocked on his door. "There's someone here to see you." Jimmy entered, carrying a thick envelope. "Final debrief materials." Sophie compiled everything: money trails, political connections, international links. Marcus accepted the envelope. "How's the boy?" "Getting better. Taking time." Jimmy sat down. "I need a favor." "Name it." "Claire wants to make a statement. Full confession, no deals. But she wants protection, not for herself, for Evan. Make sure no one from Victor's organization can reach him." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'll handle it personally." "And Jimmy, what you did? Taking them down clean? No civilian casualties? That's the kind of thing that reminds us why we wear badges." Jimmy left the station feeling lighter. Each step of the legal aftermath brought closure, transformed chaos into order. But the personal healing would take longer. He drove to the Veterans Center where he'd started volunteering, sharing his experiences with other soldiers struggling to readjust. Today's group included a young Marine fresh from Afghanistan, haunted by choices made under pressure. "You think it gets easier?" the Marine asked during break. "Making peace with what we did over there." "Not easier," Jimmy replied. "Different. We learn to carry it better, understand why we made those choices." "And family? How do they deal with what we bring home?" Jimmy thought of Evan's resilience, his ability to adapt, and survive. They're stronger than we think. But they need us present, not just physically safe. The session continued, stories shared between men who understood the weight of duty and its cost. Jimmy found himself opening up about his own journey, not just the recent battle for his home, but the longer war within himself. Back at the house, repair work continued. Jimmy and Evan had tackled the project together, turning destruction into renovation. Each repaired wall, each fresh coat of paint, marked another step toward reclaiming their space. Sophie visited occasionally, bringing updates on the international investigation her evidence had sparked. Today she found them in the backyard, installing a new security system. This one meant to protect, not imprison. Diego's testimony went well, she reported. Federal prosecutors are building cases against 3 more cartels using his information. Good. Jimmy connected another sensor. He's earning his second chance. Speaking of chances, Sophie hesitated. Claire's statement helped identify 2 corrupt judges. They're offering her limited immunity. Evan, who'd been pretending not to listen, spoke up. Does that mean she's coming home? That's up to you, buddy. Jimmy set down his tools. Your mom made mistakes, but she's trying to make them right. We can start slow, supervised visits, neutral locations. Like the therapy office? Exactly. Safe spaces where you control the situation. Sophie watched their interaction with professional appreciation. You know, when I started hunting Victor's organization, I thought justice meant punishment. But watching you 2 heal, maybe that's the real victory. As evening approached, Jimmy prepared dinner while Evan did homework at the kitchen table. The routine felt both familiar and new, comfortable rhythms overlaid with deeper appreciation for their time together. Dad, Evan looked up from his math problems. Remember when you taught me Morse code? Sure do. Came in handy, didn't it? Could you teach me more? Not just for emergencies, but because it's something we share. Jimmy smiled, recognizing the request for what it was, not fear of future threats, but desire to strengthen their bond. How about we start with some advanced stuff? Military signals, operational codes. Evan's eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm for the first time since their ordeal. Father and son bent over paper, drawing diagrams and sharing knowledge, turning survival skills into connection points. Later, after Evan went to bed, Jimmy sat in the rebuilt study. Claire's last letter lay unopened on the desk, her explanation, her apology, her hopes for redemption. He wasn't ready to read it yet, but he would be. For Evan's sake, and maybe for his own. This quiet moment of reflection and potential, setting up the deeper emotional resolutions to come while maintaining focus on the present journey of healing. The technical details of home repair and security mirror the careful reconstruction of family bonds, each requiring patience, skill, and willingness to rebuild from the foundation up. Chapter 8. Lessons Learned. The morning sun streamed through newly installed windows as Jimmy reviewed his security consulting proposals. After the incident, several local businesses had sought his expertise, not just in physical security, but in identifying internal vulnerabilities. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Diego's protection detail reports all clear. He's settling into his new life. Jimmy set the phone down, considering how paths could diverge. Diego had chosen redemption, turning his skills toward helping others. Victor had chosen destruction, dying in federal custody from wounds sustained during their final confrontation. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Chin stood there, holding a folder. May I come in? I've been reviewing Evan's progress. Jimmy led her to the kitchen, where coffee waited. They'd developed an easy professional rapport over weeks of therapy sessions. His latest drawings show significant change, Dr. Chin explained, spreading sketches across the table. See here? The house isn't just defensive positions anymore. He's adding details about family memories, positive associations. The baseball game last weekend, Jimmy recognized one scene. First time he played without scanning for threats. Exactly. He's processing the experience not just as survival training, but as proof of his resilience. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Which brings me to Claire's request for joint sessions. Jimmy's hand tightened around his coffee mug. Evan's not ready. Actually, he asked about it yesterday. His words were, maybe mom needs to heal too. The simple wisdom of children, Jimmy thought. Evan had grasped something he'd been resistant to acknowledge. Recovery wasn't a solo mission. At the Veterans Center, Jimmy shared this insight during group session. The young Marine from before, Mike Stevens, nodded in recognition. My wife said something similar, Mike admitted. After my last tour, I kept everything locked down. She said healing happens in relationships, not isolation. Smart woman, Jimmy replied. Took me too long to learn that lesson. The group discussed strategies for reconnecting with family, for bridging the gaps that trauma created. Jimmy found himself talking about Claire, not as a betrayer, but as someone who'd lost her way and was fighting to return. Later that afternoon, Evan had his first supervised visit with Claire at the therapy office. Jimmy waited outside, respecting their space while staying close enough to provide security. Dr. Chen monitored the interaction, guiding mother and son through difficult conversations. Claire had lost weight in federal custody, but her eyes were clearer, her posture more genuine than during her time with Victor. I don't expect forgiveness, she told Evan. I just want you to know how sorry I am, and how proud I am of how brave you've been. Evan studied his mother, using the observation skills Jimmy had taught him, not for threat assessment now, but for understanding. Did Victor trick you like he tricked his other people? At first, Claire admitted. But then I made choices. Bad choices. I forgot what really mattered. Dad says choices can be fixed if you're brave enough to try. Claire glanced at the observation window, knowing Jimmy waited beyond it. Your father's a wise man. Wiser than I was. The session ended with tentative plans for future meetings. As they left the office, Evan surprised both parents by hugging Claire goodbye. A quick, careful embrace, but genuine. In the car ride home, Jimmy broke their usual comfortable silence. You okay, buddy? Yeah. Evan watched the familiar streets pass. Mom's different now. More like before. People can change, especially when they face their mistakes. Like Diego? Exactly. Jimmy navigated through traffic, considering his next words. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't against other people. They're against the parts of ourselves we don't want to face. At home, they found Sophie waiting with case updates. The international investigation had expanded, revealing connections between Victor's operation and broader criminal networks. Your evidence helped shut down 3 more labs, she reported. And Claire's testimony? It's giving families closure, helping them understand what happened to their loved ones. Evan, doing homework nearby, absorbed this information. His mother's mistakes were being transformed into something positive, just as his own trauma had led to stronger bonds with his father. As evening settled over the neighborhood, Jimmy received another text, this one from Diego. A photo showed him working with at-risk youth, teaching mechanical skills, and sharing his story of redemption. Second chances, Jimmy murmured, showing the image to Evan. Like mom's trying to get. Similar. Different paths, same destination, trying to make things right. They worked on dinner together, their movements in the kitchen showing practiced coordination. Evan had developed an interest in cooking, finding peace in the precise measurements and predictable results. Dad, he measured pasta with careful attention. Could we invite Mom for dinner sometime? Not now, but maybe when we're all ready. Jimmy paused in chopping vegetables, hearing the hope and uncertainty in his son's voice. Yeah, buddy. When we're ready, we can do that. Chapter 9, A Brighter Horizon. The high school auditorium buzzed with anticipation as students and parents gathered for the state writing competition awards. Evan sat with his classmates, his essay Rising from Shadows tucked safely in his folder. Jimmy watched from the audience, noting how his son had grown in the months since their ordeal. Evan stood straighter now, his confidence earned rather than imposed by circumstances. He's going to win, Claire whispered beside him. Their cautious reconciliation had progressed to attending school events together, showing Evan that healing was possible even after deep wounds. The principal approached the podium. Our next award goes to a young man who wrote about overcoming adversity through family bonds and personal courage. His essay speaks to the resilience of the human spirit. Evan accepted his certificate with quiet pride, his voice steady as he read selected passages to the audience. Jimmy recognized scenes from their story, not just the dramatic moments, but the small victories of rebuilding trust. My father taught me that strength isn't about being unafraid, Evan read. It's about facing fears with people you trust. Sometimes the bravest thing is asking for help. Later, during the reception, Marcus arrived with news about the ongoing investigations. Task Force identified 2 more corruption networks using your intel. The ripple effects keep spreading. Good, Jimmy replied, watching Evan show Claire his trophy. Change has to start somewhere. Speaking of change, Marcus nodded toward the entrance where Sophie stood with a group of teenagers, survivors of trafficking operations exposed by their investigation. Her nonprofit's making a difference, giving people their lives back. The teenagers were sharing their stories, turning trauma into advocacy. Jimmy recognized the therapeutic value. The same process that had helped Evan heal was now helping others find their voice. At the Veterans Center that weekend, Jimmy shared his own updated perspective during group session. Mike Stevens, now a regular participant, brought his wife for the first time. Thought I had to handle everything alone, Mike told the group. Protect my family by keeping them at a distance. But that's not protection, it's another kind of harm. Jimmy nodded, thinking of his journey with Evan. We train to be self-reliant, but the real mission is learning to connect again. The session evolved into a discussion about family reintegration, about bridging gaps between military precision and emotional availability. Jimmy found himself talking about baseball games with Evan, about cooking lessons and homework help, simple moments that meant everything. Back home, father and son worked on their latest project, converting the former command center into a proper study room. Each change to the house represented another step away from darkness. Found this while cleaning. Evan held up an old family photo. Jimmy in his dress blues, Claire in a summer dress, their young family untouched by future storms. Good times, Jimmy said softly. But you know what? We're making new good times. Different, maybe harder earned, but real. Like when Mom came to my science fair? Exactly. Jimmy hung the photo alongside Evan's writing competition certificate. Life's not about avoiding falls. It's about how we get back up. Sophie visited that evening, bringing updates about Diego's progress. The former cartel lieutenant had become a valued resource in youth intervention programs, using his experience to steer others from similar paths. He asked about you both, Sophie said over dinner. Wanted you to know he's honoring his second chance. Evan considered this while setting the table, an extra place now regularly reserved for guests. Dad says redemption is a choice we make each day. Smart man, your father. Jimmy watched their interaction with quiet satisfaction. The tactical awareness that had kept Evan alive during captivity had evolved into emotional intelligence, into deeper understanding of human complexity. Claire's therapy sessions had progressed to including family counseling. Today's topic was trust, how to rebuild it, how to maintain it. Dr. Chen guided them through difficult conversations about the future. I'm not asking to erase what happened, Claire explained. Just for a chance to prove change is possible, like Diego did. Evan asked. Similar journey, different path, Jimmy said. We all find our way back differently. The session ended with tentative plans for more family dinners, more shared events. Small steps forward, each one carefully considered and freely chosen. The house stands renewed, its rooms filled with fresh memories overlaying old scars. The neighborhood has settled back into routine, though now with deeper appreciation for peace. Jimmy and Evan still practice their special codes, but now they're peppered with jokes and shared references, communication tools rather than survival tactics. Claire's path to redemption continues, measured in small victories and careful choices. The story concludes not with dramatic resolution, but with quiet hope. A father and son playing catch in their backyard, a family learning to trust again, a community healing from hidden wounds. Each character carries lessons learned through fire, transformed by choice and circumstance into something stronger. At the local fishing spot where Jimmy and Evan had spent countless weekends, father and son sat watching the sunset. Their lines dipped into the calm water, the peaceful scene a far cry from the chaos months before. Remember when you taught me to fish here? Evan asked, reeling in his line. Sure do. You were so determined to do everything yourself. Like someone else I know, Evan grinned. Mom says that's where I get it from. Jimmy chuckled, acknowledging the truth in that. Claire had been joining them for shorter outings, rebuilding family bonds one careful step at a time. Marcus pulled up in his patrol car, joining them at the water's edge. Thought I'd find you here. Got some news you'll want to hear. He shared updates about the ongoing investigations, more corrupt officials exposed, more families finding closure. The ripple effects of their actions continued spreading, turning one family's battle into a catalyst for wider change. Sophie's nonprofit had opened its first official office, providing support for families affected by organized crime. She'd hired Diego as a counselor, his personal experience proving invaluable in reaching troubled youth. "Your story's making a difference," Marcus said. "People are speaking up, reporting things they used to ignore." Back home, Jimmy found Claire waiting on the porch. She'd brought Evan's favorite lasagna, not as a bid for forgiveness, but as part of their new routine of sharing meals and rebuilding trust. "His teacher called," she said as they set the table. "They want him to present his essay at other schools, share his experience with kids who've faced trauma." "How do you feel about that?" Jimmy asked Evan. "Good, I think. If it helps other people understand they're not alone." The evening unfolded with comfortable familiarity. Homework questions, dinner conversations, plans for the weekend. Normal moments made precious by their near loss. As night fell, Jimmy sat in the study, surrounded by symbols of their journey. Evan's awards hung beside family photos old and new. His military citations shared space with letters from families helped by their stand against corruption. He opened his laptop to find an email from Captain Hayes back in Afghanistan. His old commander had followed their story through official channels, proud to see how his trust in Jimmy had been justified. "You did good, Marine," Hayes wrote. "Reminded us all what it means to fight for what matters." Evan appeared in the doorway, ready for bed but clearly wanting to talk. "Dad, I've been thinking about what Dr. Chin said, about turning bad memories into strength." "What about it?" "I think that's what we did, right? We didn't let Victor win. We made something better instead." Jimmy pulled his son close, recognizing the wisdom in those words. They had transformed their trial into triumph, their pain into purpose. The house around them stood as testament to that victory, not just repaired, but renewed. "We sure did, buddy," Jimmy said softly. "We sure did." The final scene finds them in the backyard, Jimmy teaching Evan advanced self-defense moves, not from fear now, but as a bond between them. Claire watches from the porch, her presence accepted, her path to redemption ongoing. They move through the forms together, father and son, their shadows merging in the golden light. Each stance represents a lesson learned, each movement a step away from darkness towards something brighter. "No matter what happens next," Jimmy tells his son, "we've got each other." Evan nods, understanding the deeper meaning behind those words. They've faced their worst fears and emerged stronger, not just as individuals, but as a family. Their story isn't just about survival anymore. It's about choosing to build something better from the ashes of what was lost. Epilogue. 10 years later. Evan Callahan adjusted his tie in the mirror of his university office. At 21, he carried himself with quiet confidence, his father's steady strength tempered by years of healing and growth. The nameplate on his door read, "Guest Lecturer, Criminal Psychology and Trauma Recovery." A knock interrupted his preparation. "Ready for your first lecture, Professor?" Jimmy stood in the doorway, his hair now streaked with gray, but his bearing still military straight. "Just going over my notes." Evan gestured to the papers spread across his desk. "Did you bring them?" Jimmy held up a manila folder. "Case files from the Victor Mendez investigation. Sanitized for classroom use. Approved by Marcus." They walked together through the campus halls toward the lecture theater. 10 years had transformed their relationship. The bond forged in crisis had matured into deep mutual respect and understanding. "Full house today," Jimmy observed as they entered the packed auditorium. "Word got around about your unique perspective." Students filled the seats, many already familiar with Evan's published works on trauma recovery and family resilience. His award-winning essay from high school had grown into a memoir that helped countless families dealing with similar experiences. "Good morning," Evan addressed the class. "Today we're discussing how trauma affects family dynamics and how understanding criminal psychology can aid in recovery. I'm joined by my father, James Callahan, former Marine sniper and now head of Callahan Security Consulting." Jimmy took his place at the front, noting familiar faces in the audience. Sophie Ramirez sat in the back row, her nonprofit organization now a national leader in supporting families affected by organized crime. Beside her, Marcus Cole, now police commissioner, nodded encouragingly. 10 years ago, Evan began. Our family faced a crisis that would reshape our understanding of trauma, recovery, and redemption. The lessons we learned extend far beyond our personal experience. The lecture unfolded as a masterclass in resilience. Evan and Jimmy traded perspectives, showing how military training, psychological insight, and family bonds could combine to overcome seemingly impossible odds. Afterward, they gathered in Evan's office with Sophie and Marcus. The years had strengthened their unusual friendship, turning former allies into family. Diego's program is expanding again, Sophie reported, referring to the Youth Intervention Initiative that had grown from their shared experience. 6 new centers opening next month. His story still resonates with troubled kids. Diego Torres had transformed his second chance into a mission, using his past to guide others away from similar paths. His rehabilitation centers had saved hundreds of young lives, turning potential criminals into community leaders. Claire speaking at the opening ceremony, Marcus added, "Her perspective as a mother who lost her way and found it again really connects with parents." Jimmy nodded, remembering the long journey of reconciliation. Claire had served her reduced sentence, then dedicated herself to family restoration work. She and Jimmy had found a new kind of relationship, not romantic partners anymore, but committed co-parents and friends. "How's the new security contract?" Sophie asked Jimmy. "Going well. Training corporate teams to spot internal threats, prevent infiltration, using what we learned from Victor's operation to protect legitimate businesses." Callahan Security had become an industry leader, known for combining military precision with psychological insight. Jimmy's teams didn't just guard assets. They built resilient organizations from the inside out. The conversation turned to recent developments. Marcus's anti-corruption task force had evolved into a national model, its success built on lessons learned during the Mendez investigation. Sophie's nonprofit now worked directly with law enforcement, bridging gaps between official response and family support. "Remember Captain Hayes?" Jimmy showed them a recent email. "He's retiring next month. Wants us all at the ceremony." Ronnie Hayes had stayed in touch over the years, his early support of Jimmy's emergency leave request proving pivotal. He'd gone on to implement new protocols for helping soldiers handle family crises, using their case as a teaching tool. Later that evening, they gathered at the old house, still Jimmy and Evan's home, but transformed by time and healing. The study where Victor had once plotted now served as a community meeting space, hosting support groups for families in crisis. Claire arrived with dinner, her entrance comfortable and welcome. She'd rebuilt trust gradually, proving through years of consistent choices that people could change. Her work with recovering addicts and their families had earned national recognition. "Got something to show you," Evan said over dinner. He pulled out architectural plans. "The new recovery center. We're breaking ground next month." The blueprints showed a state-of-the-art facility combining security features with therapeutic design. Callahan Security would handle protection, while Claire's family program and Diego's youth outreach would provide services. "Full circle," Jimmy observed. "Building something that would have helped us back then." "That's the point," Evan replied. "Taking what hurt us and using it to heal others." The evening continued with shared memories and future plans. Each person present represented a different aspect of recovery. Jimmy's protective strength, Claire's earned redemption, Sophie's pursuit of justice, Marcus's commitment to reform. Dr. Chun joined them later, now a close family friend, as well as a continuing source of professional guidance. Her therapeutic insights had helped shape Evan's academic work and Jimmy's security protocols. "Your family's journey has become a template," she noted, showing how crisis response, law enforcement, and mental health support can work together. As night fell, they moved to the backyard, site of so many crucial moments in their story. The space had been redesigned as a training area, where Jimmy and Evan taught self-defense classes for survivors of trauma. "Dad," Evan gestured to the stars. "Remember what you said that night after everything ended? About having each other no matter what." "Sure do. That's what we're building here, isn't it? Making sure other families have that kind of support." Jimmy looked around at their gathered friends. Once strangers brought together by crisis, now an unshakable support system. Each had taken their wounds and transformed them into wisdom, their pain into purpose. The conversation turned to upcoming projects. Sophie's organization was launching a new initiative for children affected by criminal violence. Marcus's department was implementing innovative family crisis protocols. Claire's recovery program was expanding to multiple states. You know what Victor never understood? Jimmy said thoughtfully. Real power isn't about control. It's about connection. Evan nodded, understanding flowing between father and son. That's why he lost. He thought breaking us would make him stronger. Instead, it made us unbreakable, Claire added softly. The evening wound down with plans for the future. Evan's academic career was rising, his unique perspective bridging military, law enforcement, and psychological approaches to trauma. Jimmy's security firm had contracts worldwide, teaching organizations to protect themselves while building healthy cultures. Diego's youth centers had become models of rehabilitation, proving that redemption was possible with the right support. Sophie's nonprofit partnered with law enforcement agencies across the country, creating new standards for family crisis response. As their friends departed, Jimmy and Evan stood in the front yard, the same spot where their ordeal had begun a decade ago. The house behind them stood as testament to resilience, its walls now holding stories of healing rather than harm. "We did good, didn't we?" Evan asked, echoing Captain Hayes's words from years before. "We're still doing good," Jimmy corrected. "That's the real victory." The epilogue draws to a close with father and son planning their next training session, their bond stronger than ever. The scars of their past had become foundations for helping others, their story continuing to inspire hope and change. Through their extended family of friends and allies, the impact of their stand against corruption rippled outward, touching countless lives. What began as one family's fight for survival had grown into a movement, proving that even the darkest experiences could light the way toward healing. The last image shows them all gathered in the newly designed training center, each contributing their unique strengths to the shared mission of protection and recovery. The legacy of their last patrol lived on not in violence or vengeance, but in the endless possibility of redemption and renewal. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.